Blessings to everybody. Blessings, blessings, blessings. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody's good. I hope everybody had a good weekend. It's the weekend of the 4th of July. Not that it matters to us, right? But we bless Yahweh for another Shabbat. We thank Yahweh for everything that He's doing. I just want to give a small um, kind of summary of what we've been talking about in other videos. What I'm discussing about the documentary hypothesis is called textual criticism. Textual criticism. Most of the ministers, Christian ministers, know about textual criticism. They hear about it in theological schools, but they don't go in depth as I'm going into this. And so while some people might say, "Oh my goodness, this is heresy," he's saying that the Bible is not. It's not that I'm saying that the Bible is incorrect, that the Bible is not correct, but I'm saying that the Bible was written according to traditions that were often fighting amongst themselves. And so I'm not. This is called textual criticism, is because we're taking a critical look at the text to find these different traditions and their signatures, which is not very easy, but it can be done. Shalom, brother Matthias. How are you? Blessings to you. Um, Probably in a minute or so. And Andre's gonna, or should I call him Andrew? Andre is gonna pop up somewhere. He's gonna get mad at me. I'm gonna have a very strong text from him later. Uh, but blessings to you, Matthias. Good to see that you're here. And I believe your brother's with you, right? Greetings to your brother also. There in Germany. And so we're doing textual criticism. Textual criticism. Textual criticism. We're taking a critical look at the text so that we can understand how it is that these contradictions have come to be. When you see a contradiction in text, um, when you see a contradiction in text, it might be a sign that they were written by that the text was written by two different people, and it's very easy to merge a text. I've done it plenty of times. Not plagiarism, um, but when you take the idea from one text and take the idea from another text and you merge them together, then um, it's very easy to see how one verse has is from one tradition and another verse is from the other. So we started off with the Yahweh text. We talked about that the Yahweh text originates from the Kenites. And the reason why the Yahweh text originates from the Kenites is because the Kenites were the ones who originally um, were the original worshippers of Yahweh. Okay, so the Kenites were the original worshippers of Yahweh. They don't really have much to say. They don't have commandments. But what we do see is we're going to talk about this another time. That they're giving basically a history of how they came to be, and how the origins of the worship of Yahweh. We talked a little bit about the El text, that the patriarchs were worshipers of the Canaanite Syrian um, Semite god El. And El is, there are two things that we see in the scriptures. We see Yahweh and we see El. But in our text, they are merged. But originally they were separated. So Yahweh comes from the Kenites, and we're going to talk about where the Kenites come from, that their God is different. But the Canaanites and those in the Middle East worshipped El. In the land of Canaan, they worshipped El. And so the patriarchs, they're coming um, into Canaan. They are already worshipers of El. We see Abraham making altars to El. We see Isaac blessing Jacob in the name of El, and we see Jacob many of times, praying to El, blessing El. His name has El in it, Israel. And so those are indications that that the patriarchs were worshipers of El. Now later you'll see that there are texts where Abraham, for instance, is making an altar to Yahweh Elyon. And I think it's Genesis chapter 22. He's making an altar to Yahweh Elyon, Yah Elyon. And this is evidence of the Deuteronomy text. Deuteronomy text came about after the Yahweh and El traditions were merged, and this may have happened around the time of Hezekiah, somewhere around that time, because Hezekiah has Proverbs, he has Psalms, and so some of those Psalms are from Hezekiah, and from some of the Proverbs are from Hezekiah. So when the J and the E traditions were merged, that was just what it was. So this is why you see Yahweh and El in the same text. That Yahweh is the God of Israel. Yahweh is not the God of Israel. El is the God of Israel. Okay, so they merged those two traditions. The Yahweh tradition, which comes from the Kenites, the El tradition, which comes from the Canaanites. And you can tell that the El tradition has something to do with Mesopotamia, because you can plainly see the evidence of the law of Hammurabi in the El text, chapters 21 to 24. Huh? Yeah. Chapters 21 to 24 are a basic copy of the law of Hammurabi. If you haven't read the law of Hammurabi, this is a secular text. Okay, this is a text of a man who's not even worshiping Yahweh. He's talking about how Murdoch has blessed him, and Murdoch has given him wisdom to give these laws. And now we see in the text in the El text, that Moses is supposedly giving those laws. And so when we have to think that Moses, I would like to say that Moses was not a real person, but I believe that he was. Certain historical, but I don't believe that Moses was originally in the text. I believe that he was placed in the text, because all of these traditions felt like they could go back to Moses. And Moses' name has authority. Just like Christians say, well, Jesus' name has authority. If I say in the name of Jesus, that means you have to do it. It was the same thing back in those times. If I say that Moses said it, then that means you have to do it. You're obligated to do it because Moses' name has power. Everybody knew who Moses was, that Moses was a prophet. And so you have the Yahweh, the El, and when the Yahweh and El traditions are merged, they produce the Deuteronomy tradition, which is produced by a group called the Yahweh alone. These were prophets who were coming from the north. In the north, while they were in the north, they were telling the northern tribes, you can't worship these other gods. You have to worship Yahweh only. Worship Yahweh only. Worship Yahweh only. Worship Yahweh only. Okay? And so when the Assyrians came and took the northern tribes captive, they came down into Judah and they preached that same thing. This is the reason why Hezekiah starts, does this whole revival thing. Okay. But by the time this Yahweh alone tradition begins to, capture strength, um, the Yahweh and the El traditions had already been merged. And so this is why you see Yahweh and El in the same sentence, in the same line, because Yahweh, your Elohim, Yahweh El. You see those combined in a lot of texts. And so the Deuteronomy text, which comes from the Yahweh alone movement, is basically its main purpose. It has a purpose. Its main purpose is not to tell you how the tradition originated. It's basically to encourage the people to separate from other gods. And so the tactic that they use is to say, well, Yahweh, this is the way Yahweh originally made it. A lot of people try to do that. Well, it wasn't like that before. This is the way it was before. And so the Deuteronomy text says, originally, Yahweh spoke to Abram and told Abram to come away from his parents. Okay, and so this is where we get that Abraham is the father of faith from the Yahweh alone text. Okay, from the Deuteronomy text. And so that's worth mentioning. Another thing that the Yahweh alone movement wanted to do, they wanted to destroy anything that will make the people of Israel go back into idolatry. And so you have an emphasis on, oh, those are the Canaanites and we are the Israelites. So we have to do away with anything that has to do with the Canaanites. We have to do away with their gods. Any other culture that comes along, we have to do away with that. Okay. So the Yahweh alone movement does this, and all throughout their text, there's a reoccurring theme of destroying altars, of destroying high places, of destroying the groves. There's a reoccurring theme within the text. So you know which texts are from the Yahweh alone, are from the Yahweh alone movement, because they emphasize the destroying of the altars. And so also coming from that combination of the J and E traditions is the Zedoqite text. Understand, who is Zadok? Zadok does not come around until David. Zadok is the high priest that was named by David. Before Zadok, we don't see a great emphasis on the children of Aaron. Okay? We don't see a great emphasis on that. All right? So Zadok, yeah, exactly. We don't even know who Zadok is. But Zadok was the priest that David put as high priest. Okay? So he was David's high priest. Whereas in Samuel's time, there was no high priest. During the judges' time, you don't hear anything about a high priest. Samuel's time, you don't hear anything about a high priest, but you hear about judges, which tells us that the tribes were ruling themselves. They were not united and at all times. It wasn't until they decided to form a confederacy and become one nation, the Israelite nation, that Saul becomes king. And when Saul was king, you barely heard anything about Judah. Then David comes along from the tribe of Judah, and David wants to unite all of the tribes. Okay. And when David united all of the tribes, he also brought in that JE tradition. Okay. And so the Davidic worship may be the origin of the JE tradition. All right. But today we're going to be talking about the Zedoqite text. What is the Zedoqite text? Bible, please.
Is this English? Spanish.
Really? I can speak
Why
Spanish.
don't you have your Bible with you?
Bible's up here.
There's the English one, right?
There is an English one, and it was. I think I'm. Sorry, y'all, I'm looking for my Bible.
So you want to use the Spanish one?
I think I'll be good. Okay, so I'll just use the Bible that's up here.
You want?
It's not charged. So the Zedeqite tradition. There are certain patterns that we notice in the Zedeqite tradition. The Zedeqite tradition has no problem copying the worship of other religions and traditions. How do we know this? It's texts like 2 Kings 16, where I want to Uriah, 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 Uriah. Sorry, Uriah, Uriahu.
Urias. Uriah.
Don't confuse me. It's in Spanish. Uriahu. Uriahu was a priest in the time of King Ahab, right? Ahab? Ahaz. So, in the time of King Ahaz, his high priest was Uriahu. Uriahu, it doesn't say much about him. But what it does say about Uriahu speaks volumes. It says that Ahaz went to Damascus, and when he went to Damascus, he saw an altar. So he sent the dimensions and the plans to Uriahu, his high priest, and Uriahu built that altar for him. So Uriahu didn't say, well, this is not the way that Yahweh originally established it. Uriahu doesn't fight with the king. He just does what the king wants him to do, which tells us that the Davidic line and the priesthood were together for a long time. Is that Aisha? Blessings, Aisha, to you and your family. And so the Judah and Levi were always together. And this is why when you read the story in Kings about the separation between the northern and the southern tribes, where do the Levites go? They go with the southern tribes. Okay? Ahaz was the king of the southern tribe, right?
Ahaz,
he was the king of Judah, right? Let me see.
Yeah. He's king of Judah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I got my stuff correct. I don't want to be giving out bad information. And so Ahaz goes to Damascus. He sees an altar. He sends the dimensions of the altar to his high priest, Uriahu. Uriahu, what does Uriahu do? He doesn't say, well, king, I can't do that because this is not what Yahweh commanded us. He says, okay, I'll have it built before you get back. And so they don't have a problem with taking from other cultures. Okay, so the Aaronite tradition and the Zedeqite tradition, among the priests, there were two factions. There was the Aaronite faction, and there was the Zedeqite faction. The Zedekites felt like they were better than all of the other Levites. So you got the Levites, the Aaronites, and the Zedekites. The Zedekites felt like they were better than everybody. The Aaronites felt like they were better than everybody. And then you have the Levites, who seemed to be temple servants. Okay? And so the Zedekites considered themselves the upper class, and they found a way to exert their authority over the priesthood. Okay? So, She, she's just looking around. Just yeah, I've never seen this before. Um, so there are some things that when you read about Moses, you think are very peculiar. For instance, Moses' mother was Jochebed. Go to Exodus chapter, I believe it's chapter 1. So it should be toward the end, or chapter 2. Exodus chapter 2. It should talk about the genealogy of the Levites. Levi is a Semitic name. Levite's sons have Semitic names. Is it Merari, uh, Kohat, and there's one more. You don't see it?
No.
Um, yeah, it doesn't give the genealogy there. So I believe it's around chapter 5.
Her hair is getting curly.
Maybe not. Oh, I like this Bible. It has the years. 1491 AC or BC. So there's a genealogy that's written. Um, just um, give me just 1 second, you all. Oh man, it's somewhere in chapter 5 or chapter 7, chapter 6. Okay, it's in chapter 6. It says, verse 19. Go up, go up, go up, go up, go up. Chapter 6, verse 14. These are the heads of the families um, of their father. The children of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel. Um, verse 15 says the sons of Simeon. Verse 16 says these are the names of the sons of um, Levi: Gershom, uh, Kohath, and Merari. So of the sons of Gershom. Now of the sons of skip to verse 18. There's a name here of the sons of Kohath. There's Amram. Amram is an Egyptian name, and the rest of the names are Semitic. So this Amram, verse 20, and Amram took for a wife Jochebed, 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 Jochebed. You guys don't understand. Jochebed, whenever you have a name with Yo at the beginning, it's it's short for Yahoo.
I'm like,
Yehochebed.
Oh, she was Hebrew.
She may not have been Hebrew. She may have been a Kenite because Yah is in her name. Okay, so Yehochebed is basically the name. Yehochebed. She married Amram. Amram sounds very Egyptian. So my guess, not that the scripture is saying that, but I'm guessing that Amram was an Egyptian. Yehoshaphat may have been a Kenite, and those two, um, I don't know if she could have been a Kenite, but
Israelite.
uh, I don't know if she was a Semite either. Just the fact that Yahoo is in her name. So Amram is an Egyptian name. Aaron is an Egyptian name. Moses is an Egyptian name. These are Egyptian names, and this tells me
Her
that
sons had Egyptian
Amram,
names.
her sons had Egyptian names.
Miriam
And
is
that's
it?
the point. Miriam,
Is it Ram? Is the Hindu name?
huh?
Hindu god name.
Ram is a Hindu name. So I think Ram carries because Ram is also a Hebrew word. So it may come from somewhere else. It may come from another language. Um, so um, Amram is an Egyptian name. Moses is an Egyptian name. Aaron is an Egyptian name. But
No.
but some of these people have Israelite names. Verse 22. And the sons of Uziel are Misael, El Safan, and Sikri.
Okay. Yeah.
El. Them Aaron's wife was Elisabeth. So Aaron married a Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be that Aaron was a Hebrew. It may be that his father was an Egyptian.
Mm-hmm.
His father was an Egyptian, and he married a Hebrew. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So they may have been Egyptian priests, which would make more sense. Indo-European heritage, and that's what it seems like. Most of the European languages originate from Sanskrit, which is which is a language that comes from India. So at some point in time, um, whoever carried that language, someone carried the language from India all the way to Europe, and so you can imagine what could have happened um, in between. And so that's when I learned the origins of English. I learned that English originates from an Indo-European language, Sanskrit. But um, um, it's evident that Aaron was not a Semite. He may have been an Egyptian and an Egyptian priest at that. From a line of Amram was a priest, and his sons were priests. So, but he married a Semite, and this Semite had 3 children and gave them Egyptian names, which is interesting to me. It's very interesting, right, Mama? Interesting. And so there is something a little bit. There's a pattern that's already starting to establish itself. We're going to see traces of Egyptian religion where Moses is concerned. Okay, when we keep going, we see that Moses was saved and adopted by the daughter of Pharaoh. Wasn't the daughter of Pharaoh, it was the sister of Pharaoh. There is a person named in Egyptian history called Third Moses. Third Moses was um, the adopted son of a co-regent, which is Pharaoh's daughter, Pharaoh's sister. Pharaoh's sister was co-regent reigning with Pharaoh, and Moses would have been next in line. It doesn't tell us what happened, but all of a sudden, third Moses is stricken from all of the records. But and so is Pharaoh's sister. So Moses and third Moses, in my opinion, are the same one, are the same people. So Moses, he flees from Egypt, and when fleeing from Egypt, he meets Jethro, who is either he was a Midianite or a Kenite. We're gonna talk about this later, whether Jethro was a Midianite or a Kenite. Okay. But Jethro introduces to him the worship of Yahweh. But when Moses comes to the people of Israel and teaches them the worship of Yahweh, he mixes Egyptian purification rites. Okay, so let me think. Let me give some examples: circumcision, baptism, those types of things. When they have to immerse themselves, they have to go to a mikvah. The mikvah is an Egyptian rite. What else? So these are patterns that you will start to see in the text. Going backwards, though, the Zedoqite text in Germanic languages, Ram is a root, which means something strong, like for person, strong in mind. So in Hebrew, it means lifted up. Ram means lifted up. So going back to the Zedekiah text, the Zedekites, when they begin their text, they start with Genesis chapter 1. There is no Genesis chapter 2. Maybe a couple of verses were in there. But Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 3. Both of these are Babylonian source texts that come from Babylonian traditions about how the gods um, didn't want to be, um, how the gods didn't want to be, or they didn't like what they created, and so they exiled them. That's from Babylonian religion. Um, and Adam is not made by Yahweh, he's made by Elohim. Remember, there are a lot of people who are saying, oh, Elohim doesn't have to be plural, it could just be singular. Elohim is a plural, just like Shemaim is a plural. Shemaim means heavens, not heaven, means heavens plural, means the skies. And Elohim means gods. So the Elohim make Adam in Genesis chapter 5. Okay? In Genesis chapter 5, Elohim makes Adam. And this is where we get the idea, oh, Adam was the first creation. Maybe, maybe not. So you have chapter 1, chapter 3, chapter 5, and then parts of the flood story also belong to the Zedeckite tradition. I was like, is there a bug or something? So parts, and you'll notice in the flood tradition that one tradition says, oh, the flood happened in it happened in 40 days. And then another tradition says, oh, it happened in 100 and something days. Okay? And so there's a difference in the text. Fine. So after the flood, we have the genealogy. The genealogy belongs to the Deuteronomy text. The genealogy belongs to the Deuteronomy text because they want to divide the Israelites from the Canaanites. So part of Genesis chapter 12, part of it is Deuteronomy and part of it is priestly, because they want to emphasize that that God was the one that spoke to Abram. Okay. Chapter 12 goes through. Chapter 13 is Deuteronomy. Chapter 14 is the L text. Chapter 15 is Deuteronomy. Chapter 16 is the L text. Chapter 17 belongs all to the Zedekites. Notice in this text that his name is, it says, and Yahweh spoke to Moses and said, I am El Shaddai. So the Zedekite from the beginning begins to say, well, before his name was El, but now he revealed his name to Israel, and his name is Yahweh.
Wouldn't be that the same issue with, his name is El Shaddai? El Rafa. No, Yahweh Rafa.
Oh, the many names of Yahweh, the Most High, God Almighty, those types of things. Those were never used to describe Yahweh. They were always used to describe El. And so you'll even see because I know this will be brought up, you'll even see in in the Psalms where David calls Yahweh Yahweh Elyon, Yah Elyon. Okay, so he wanted, and that's proof that there was a mix between Yah and El Elyon. So when the priestly text goes into the Exodus, they're the ones that produce Exodus chapter 6, where Moses says, makes a declaration that Yahweh said he did not reveal his name Yahweh to your fathers. He was known to them as El Shaddai. And so this is a pattern that you see, that Abraham. And so what the Zedeqite text tells us is that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob worshipped El. But what the Zedekites want us to think is that El and Yahweh are the same. Okay? And because it's a later tradition, or it's written at a later time, it can be easily put together like that. That's that JE thing, popping up in there, okay? And so Moses, when he enters the scene, he becomes a great prophet. But in the Zedeqite text, guess who's next to him? Aaron. So Moses speaks through Aaron.
Well, I mean, when he was helping take out Israel, why would he need Aaron if, Yahweh called him?
Exactly.
Maybe after Moses, Aaron is the one.
But this is how the Zedekites explain secession. What they want to say is Moses gave power to Aaron, and now the sons of Aaron have power. Now the sons of Aaron have power. And then when Zadok gets put in as high priest, now the sons of Zadok have power. Okay? And so they're using this as a type of secession, as a secession doctrine. Okay? Moses gave power to Aaron. Aaron gave power to Zedekites, to the priests, to his sons, and then David gave power to the priests of Zadok. Okay, and so what will you find? What will you find in the Zedekiah tradition? We've already gotten to all the way to Exodus, but you'll also find the law of Moses. You'll also find that the Zedekites took the sacrifices that were made to El, because they're not mentioned specifically in the El text. You'll hear about a drink offering every once in a while. The tabernacle, that's Zedeqite. The sacrifices, the book of Leviticus, most of it is Zedeqite. The book of Numbers is mostly Zedeqite. Um, and that's basically it. So um, the Zedeqite text has Moses introducing sacrifices to the people of Israel, whereas Jeremiah says, "Well, Yahweh never taught the people of Israel to do sacrifices." Jeremiah was a priest, mind you. Jeremiah was a priest, and Jeremiah says, "Yahweh didn't teach us to do sacrifices."
Jeremiah, oh,
So that,
Yeah, because he was supposed to be a priest, wasn't he? Or was he a priest?
he was a priest.
but he's the one who takes the sacrifices.
Well, he had a vision or something.
He was. What was it? He didn't have visions, but I guess Yahweh spoke with him.
Oh, that he was going to put words in his mouth, not to be worried about what people said.
Hello, Dahoud. This is the first time I'm seeing your name.
Dahoud Ezekiel.
Uh-huh. So it says I don't believe Yahoo ordained sacrifices. Yahweh didn't ordain sacrifices. Those sacrifices come from the El tradition, come from the worship of El, and that tradition. And so blessings to you, Dahoud. Thank you for watching. We always appreciate. I need your feedback. Hello, need your feedback. So yeah. But we have to remember that El and Yahweh were separate in the beginning, and so El was the one who ordained those sacrifices, but they were not written all together. They were just practiced. Okay, it wasn't until the Zedekites were the tradition that said, "Oh, we're going to write all of these down." Why? Because the Zedekite tradition was, in a sense, dying off, and they needed to preserve. This is something that we have to understand about these traditions. These traditions are writing out of necessity. Out of necessity. They're not writing because I oppose this tradition and I'm going to write about it. That's what we do nowadays. But they were writing out of necessity, out of the fear that the tradition would die off. And so the Zedekites, they write, and Ezekiel also writes. And so Ezekiel writes in favor of the Zedekite tradition. Okay. So the sacrifices are a Zedeckite thing, because how else would the Zedekites survive?
Sacrifices comes from music, right?
The sacrifices come from El worship, and the El worship comes from the Canaanites and the Mesopotamians. So it was El was a Babylonian god. Okay. Anything else?
So they would have learned more about him in that when they were taken out of Jerusalem. When Jeremiah was there, they would have learned more about that worship, and it would have expanded more.
Well, when you read the book of Ezekiel, where's the book of Ezekiel taking place? In Babylon. So Ezekiel is a priest, and he's talking about these sacrifices, and he's talking about the temple, and he's talking about, all of the things that, he's talking about all of these things. He's in Babylon. He's in Babylon. And so again, they don't have any reserve in taking from other religions. Any other comments? 15 minutes short, you guys. 15 minutes. No other comments? You're asking, have I read the Syriac book
Syriac
of Clement, Reckontines,
recognitions.
and Homilies? Everything is explained about it. Most of us agree with the
Recognitions.
recognitions in the homilies. Syriac book. Um, Most of us agree
The
with
books.
the Clementine homilies, and
Recognitions.
but what we also have to recognize is that I'm an Ebionite. As an Ebionite, there are Yahwehist Ebionites, there are Zedoqite Ebionites, there are probably Yahweh alone. There are different types of Ebionites who prescribe to different types of traditions. And so I've decided to go all the way back to the Yahweh. And that's why, this is kind of important. That's why I'm teaching on this textual criticism, because I, for myself, need to know what the original worship was like. Not saying that any of the other traditions were wrong, and that's the thing. We've come into we've come out of Christianity, and in Christianity we've learned this is wrong, this is not. And so when you learn that these were all traditions, it's not a matter of right and wrong, it's just a matter of what tradition you follow. So what's right in your tradition is not, always what's right in my tradition. But I've decided to follow the Yahweh, and so there's a little disagreement with myself and other people, because, for instance, I don't really care for baptism. I don't practice baptism that much, not that much, not at all, because I don't practice circumcision either, because those are Egyptian, those are Zedeckite tradition. They don't belong to the Yahweh tradition. It's not original. And so, even though it's not original, it doesn't mean that it's, a sin or it's prohibited. But that's just the way. That's just the way I roll. Um. So, any other comments? But the Clementine homilies and recognitions, to us in this group, it's a pretty good book. And it explains a lot. For instance, it explains that Adam didn't sin and all of that stuff. Not explains, but it talks about it.
If they don't believe that.
There's only what? Free herbs.
Green herbs. Oh.
So vegetarianism is also a trait of Ebionite worship. The Yahweh tradition doesn't really talk about it, and it probably doesn't talk about it because that was their lifestyle. But there is only one tradition, the Deuteronomy tradition, that talks about. Is it the? It's not even the Deuteronomy yet. Deuteronomy tradition talks about it, and the Zedekiah tradition talks about eating meat because they did sacrifices. Oh, does it? Your your English is fine. I can completely understand everything that you're saying. Um, so yeah, um, the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's another thing. The Dead Sea Scrolls, the Clementine homilies, they seem to go hand in hand. Um, I'm glad it interests you. Yeah, I'm glad it interests you, and hopefully, if you have any questions, you can always ask me. Send me an email. Write a comment under the videos. Feel free. I've had other people who have done that, and I get to them. I address them. Um, you know, and I try to answer their questions as good as best as I can. So, any other questions or comments? So, just to make it clear here at the end of the video, that we are in this group, we are Yahweh's. Exactly. The Aramaic text of Matthew, it also talks about vegetarianism.
There's a lot of books in from some historians saying that the original followers were vegetarians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys.
The original Passover was vegetarian.
You guys, now it's not even the Christian interpretation is not even the Oh, you're from the Netherlands. Blessings to you. Uh-huh. So now the Christian interpretation is not even being used for something like this. A lot of people relied on Christianity, and they understand that Christianity is not authentic to the discipleship of Yeshua. Okay, I'm gonna look you up on Facebook. Of course, you can add me. I'm gonna look you up on Facebook, and I'll add you. Blessings to you. Also, I'm glad to have heard from you. I think you're the one who's silently watching. I'm like, who's this fourth person that's there? Or fourth and fifth. Who is this person? Who's this extra person? I'm glad to have met you in person. Or well, not in person, but over video. We're happy to have your comment. Brother Matthias is also from Germany, from Europe. So we bless you both for listening from so far of a distance. It's a blessing to me that you guys are listening all the way from Europe. When we first started doing this, we thought that there would be people in this area or people in this country. And while we have Brother Andrew, who's in the United States but from another state, you guys I'm hearing reports of people from Ethiopia also. And so it's a blessing to me. Even though it's not a lot of people, it's still a blessing to me. And, feel free to contact me. Feel free to add me on Facebook. I'll put my yeah, we're from Indiana, Illinois, which I live right on. We both live close to the state line, so we're able to come together. And so, oh, you also have a YouTube channel, The Way 364. I'm definitely gonna be looking into that channel and see what you have there. And so after this, my friends here, we're gonna be investigating your we don't say that in a mean way, but we say that we're going to be looking at your videos to see what your your teachings and stuff, because it's not just again, we come out of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, which teach more of a dictatorship. But in my personal opinion, each of us have something to learn from each other. So there are things that I present in my studies that, for instance, Sister Hannah, Miss Set Apart Way, has presented to me. And so this is the way things go. My wife is the question asker. That's what she knows how to do. She'll listen to the things that you're saying, and she'll say, well, what about this? She's that one that gives those questions that you just wouldn't think about automatically. And so we can all learn from each other. So it would be good to get together with Brother Matthias and get together with myself also. I'd love to speak with you myself. We're going into 55 minutes, you guys. And so Zoom. So Zoom. We can talk about this, and we can all talk. Do you is my phone on the charger?
My phone is charged.
Your phone is on the charger. Okay. So we're gonna look into Zoom and see what it is.
Oh, Zoom. Okay.
Okay.
Zoom.com?
Huh?
It's website?
Zoom.
Is
I'm
it
guessing
app?
that it's an
Yeah.
app that lets you do video calling.
Oh, yeah, Zoom.
Okay. Um. So yeah. I don't really have anything much to say, but Dahoud, I will be um contacting you. You'll see me add you on Facebook. Hopefully, it'll have you. Can you go and charge my phone or see if my phone is charging?
Which one?
The new one. I kind of want to do this now before I end the stream. Ooh. Y'all, it's hot today. So blessings to you all. Blessings, blessings, blessings. Did you write down his Facebook name and
No.
his YouTube channel? Copy and paste that into your notes so I can look at it.
Not here surviving? After the charging. Not here surviving for the time.
No, I wanted to take down his information.
So those 360.
Yahweh bless you, Matthias. You'll probably be hearing from me. Well, yeah, not probably. You will be hearing from me in a couple of minutes. Let me see.
That's in Germany.
Let me think.
I was looking for the Netherlands.
Hey.
Let me think. I'm just gonna message myself.
I'm looking at the world map.
You looking at the world map?
Oh, Germany, the Netherlands are next to each other.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Matthias and Dahoud, you might be able to get together.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're right there next to each other. Where is it at?
Dahoud.
Germany and Netherlands.
No.
Do you want me to add him first and then send you
You can. And then did you take down his YouTube too?
it? Yeah.
Okay. So you got all the information? Okay. All right, you guys. That's all for today. May Yahweh bless you all. Dahoud, stay where you are.
Oh, yes.
You'll be hearing from me.
Tell him
Blessings.
if he has a picture of not himself, but
Did you add him already?
Yeah, I added him.
Okay.
I think that's him. You want me to send you it?
I'm sending him a message. Oh, you don't have a message.
I don't have Messenger.
Okay, I'll do it on here. All right. Blessings to you all. I'm going to end the stream here. Enjoy your Shabbat. Goodbye. Shalom. Baruch Hu.